Passed multiple laws limiting this decision, which, at least in the shows I watched, were being discussed as a viable option. And passed a number, and apparently maybe even executive privilege passed some limitations. I don't know if that's possible or not. It's not as important. Would you think this would have any influence on the judges, or should have some influence on the judges' decisions on these limiting features to their...
There was many years ago, there was a famous writer about politics on the court, Finley Peter Dunn, and he said, the court follows the flag. Does it do that consciously, unconsciously? I don't know the answer to that, but you can think of examples like upholding the internment of the Japanese in World War II. A very difficult decision to understand, except perhaps in the context of war. But there's no question that the courts are influenced, and maybe properly so, by the tenure of the times, by what's out there. I think of the courts that initially, the Supreme Court initially turning down, rejecting much of the legislation, very important legislative acts by Congress when Roosevelt was trying to pull us out of the Depression. It wasn't many years later when the theories that were used to do that were totally rejected by a court that, perhaps looking around, came to understand that those decisions just didn't make sense anymore for the times. And I think that's part of what a court has to do, and properly so.
We'll take one more question over here.
Judge Coburn, without putting you on the spot, but could you discuss activism with the New Jersey Supreme Court on their ruling for many years about giving students with education a fair, the money?
Sure. Complex. I'll make a few comments about it. I'm not sure if I'll directly answer you, but we have a constitutional provision in New Jersey that says that the state shall ensure a thorough and efficient education for students between the ages of 6 or 7, something like that, and 18. The court was confronted many years ago with that case, and they argued then 2 points. They argued thorough and efficient education. They argued equal protection of the laws. California had rejected equal protection of the laws. Our Supreme Court rejected equal protection, and I think they did so, I know they did so, in part because of concern about, well, if you apply that to education, then what would you have to do with respect to other services provided by towns, police, fire, and so on? Would everybody be entitled to equal treatment there? So they decided that everybody was entitled to a thorough and efficient education. Well, that's sort of obvious because the Constitution says it. But then, without defining what a thorough and efficient education was, they concluded that too many people weren't getting it, and therefore that more money ought to be spent. And a lot of money has been spent on that theory. And interestingly enough, to the point where in recent years, they're actually often expending more money because of court order in some of the districts that are getting the advantage of that decision. In addition, in a decision some years ago, the court found that pre-first grade education was required, even though the people of getting that were below the age set in the Constitution. The argument was that it was implicit because the evidence showed that if you didn't attack the problem there, then just starting the first grade wouldn't get you a thorough and efficient education. serious issues, and I don't really know the answer to it. It's a problem because what's happened is that the state has been forced to spend money in that area, monies that could have been spent in other areas that have also suffered because we don't have enough money to do everything. And so I think, I certainly understand why some people feel that's a court going too far. And that often happens when a court gets into an area where it's making social policy. Sometimes it goes down better, like Brown versus Board of Education, at least eventually, and sometimes not. We're probably better off for it in our state that the court followed that course, but it's certainly a debatable one, that's for sure.